"Your ride's outside, Mom," Milo said. "I gave Lacey your car. She needed something nicer." He said it like it was helpful, like he'd done me a favor. I was still holding the wedding gift in my hand, the one I'd wrapped in silver paper with a ribbon that took me 20 minutes to tie. My heels dangled from the other hand. I hadn't even put them on yet. I thought he was coming to pick me up himself. I glanced past the porch rail and saw a ride-share idling at the curb. Gray sedan, tinted windows. The kind of car you don't remember after you get out. I blinked. My car, Lacey needed something roomier. The dress, the bouquet, everything. He smiled, already distracted. "We'll see you there." Then he hung up. I stood there for a moment, heart beating against my ribs. The phone screen dimmed in my palm. The silence that followed was louder than the words. I slipped on my heels, locked the door behind me, walked down the path I'd swept clean that morning, just in case Milo stopped by. The driver opened the back door, said my name wrong. I nodded anyway. On the way there, I watched the streets blur past the window. The gift sat on my lap, untouched. My corsage bent slightly at the edge where I'd fastened it too tightly. I adjusted it, then gave up. When we arrived at the venue, the valet didn't look at me twice, but I saw her, Lacey, step out of my blue Buick. She was laughing. Her heel caught slightly on the curb, and Milo reached out to steady her hand at her waist like she was royalty. He kissed her cheek. She handed him the car keys. My keys. I stood on the sidewalk a few steps behind them. No one turned. No one waited. I shifted the gift box in my arms and followed them inside. The smell of catered food hit me first, something buttery, sweet, expensive. I didn't belong in that scent. Not anymore. I followed the signs toward the reception hall looking for my name. The reception hall looked like a magazine spread. Gold flatware, crisp linen runners, white roses stretching up from glass vases like they were trying to touch the chandeliers. It was the kind of space I used to dream Milo would get married in. And maybe I'd have let myself enjoy it if my name wasn't tucked near the kitchen doors like an afterthought. Table 11. A small round one squeezed between the swinging door and the drink station. My place card, Mrs. Erlina Voss, was slightly bent. Someone had written it in a different font from the rest, like it had been added last minute. Or replaced. I sat down quietly. No one else joined me. The other seats were empty, and the ones meant to be filled had already migrated toward the more flattering parts of the room. People in pearl earrings and pressed collars passed by, balancing plates and compliments. No one looked at my table twice. A waiter brushed past my shoulder, muttering sorry without stopping. Another pushed through the kitchen door with a tray full of stuffed mushrooms, nearly bumping my elbow. I folded my hands in my lap, smiled faintly at no one. Lacey was standing at the head table, draped in champagne silk, holding a flute of rosé. She was radiant, not because of who she was, but because everyone in that room treated her like light. Milo stood beside her. They posed for the photographer, arm in arm, backlit by fairy lights and applause. When she reached down to adjust her clutch, I saw them my keys, my silver keychain with the navy tassel Milo gave me for Christmas 5 years ago, dangling from her purse like it belonged there. They gave speeches. Her father spoke first, then her sister. Someone toasted Lacey's grace and Milo's loyalty. The photographer kept circling the same 3 tables. When I raised my glass for the 5th time, it wasn't for anyone else's sake, but to remind myself I was still holding it. No one called my name. No one looked for me. I was the mother of the groom, but only in biology. I adjusted my napkin, then reached down to check the gift box still at my feet. No one had ordered me a corsage. I realized it that morning while brushing lint off my jacket and straightening the hem of my dress. There was no florist delivery, no call from the planner. No one had thought of it. Not Milo, not the bride, not even out of obligation. So on my way to the venue, I stopped at the grocery store on 5th. The floral clerk, a teenager with chipped black nail polish, wrapped up a small wrist corsage in plastic. Carnation's baby's breath, and a ribbon in pale lavender. It clashed with my navy sleeves, but it was the only one they had left. I paid in cash. The same way I'd paid for the venue deposit back in February when Milo called in a panic about the booking window closing. The same way I'd covered the caterer's retainer after the couple forgot the second payment. And the same way I paid the event planner when Milo's credit card bounced twice. They didn't know, or maybe they didn't ask. I just covered it, quietly, like I always had. I wore that grocery store corsage on my wrist like it belonged there, even though it wilted early under the warm lights. I didn't expect anyone to comment on it, and no one did. From my seat near the kitchen, I could see the dance floor swell with laughter and music. Plates were cleared from every table but mine. I hadn't even finished the rolls before the waitstaff skipped over me. Maybe they thought no one would notice if the lady near the servers went hungry. I placed my linen napkin across my lap and waited. Waited for someone to remember. For Milo to glance over. For one of the photographers to notice the woman with silver hair and aching hands sitting in the corner like a hired extra. But no one came. No one even waved. I looked at the carnation ribbon slipping loose from my wrist and pressed it gently back into place. That corsage, just like everything else on that day, was something I had bought myself. I leaned down and pulled the envelope from my bag. I had brought the envelope days earlier to the bank just to be sure the check wouldn't cause any issues. $14,700. It was the final balance for the venue, the one that would clear the books, tie the bow, make everything appear seamless on paper. I folded it once, sealed it in a white envelope, and slid it into a slim gift box. On top, I placed a small handwritten card. Proud of you always, Mom. No flourish, no guilt. Just truth, the kind I hoped would land softly. The box sat beneath my chair all through dinner. I kept nudging it with my foot, checking that it was still there, even though no one else checked on me. Plates came and went. Laughter floated through the air like perfume. Lacey's family stood often, pouring wine, directing photographers linking arms with each other like they were on stage. Then came the toasts. Lacey raised her glass first. Her voice was sweet, full of practiced sincerity. To my family, she said, eyes glassy. To my mother, who held me through every breakdown. To my father, who told me I was worth every minute. To my sister, who made me laugh when I wanted to cry. Applause followed. Some people stood. A few dabbed their eyes. My name was not mentioned. Milo stood beside her, smiling arm around her waist. He didn't say a word. He didn't correct the omission. He didn't lift his glass in my direction or even glance toward the corner of the room. I reached down, pulled the gift box onto my lap, and opened it just enough to slide out the envelope. I tucked the check back into my purse, closed the gift box, leaving only the note inside. Then I stood, pushed in my chair, and walked out without saying goodbye. No one followed me. No one noticed. Back at home, I placed the envelope on my kitchen counter beside the wilted corsage and turned off the porch light. The next morning, my phone began to ring. The first call came at 6:43 a.m. Too early for anything except panic. By 7:15, there were 6 more. Then 2 voicemails from Lacey. None of them said good morning. None of them asked if I got home safe. None said thank you. They all said the same thing. The venue says they're missing the final payment. Did you drop it off? I didn't answer. Instead, I boiled water-ground beans and poured my coffee. The way I always did. Slow, quiet, deliberate. The air outside was still gray. I sat at the kitchen table, same seat as always, and watched the wind press against the maple leaves just beyond the window. The envelope still sat on the counter where I left it the night before. I brought it to the table with me, opened it, tore the check once, then again, until 4. Even pieces sat neatly stacked on a white plate beside my toast. I ate in silence. They hadn't asked about the note in the box. They didn't mention the gift I didn't leave. They only noticed the one thing that hadn't been handed over. I rinsed my cup, let the water run longer than necessary, then turned off my phone, held the silence in my palms like something holy. By noon, a courier came by with a large envelope. The planner had forwarded the vendor receipts I'd asked for months ago. I flipped through them at the table, scanning the itemized charges. Every line had my initials next to them. Every transfer matched my account. I had spent more on that wedding than I had on my own car, and yet the only thing they remembered me for was a missing payment. I folded the paperwork and slid it into the binder I kept beneath the hallway cabinet. Yellow cover labeled in block letters, Wedding. I sat back down, poured myself another cup, and left the phone off. By the time the sun dipped past the neighbor's fence, I had already opened the hallway closet and pulled the binder out again. I pulled the yellow binder down from the hallway shelf. It was heavier than I remembered. Or maybe I was just tired in a new kind of way. I laid it flat on the kitchen table, opened it to the first tab. Venue. The contract was still crisp, printed on thick paper. My name sat plainly at the bottom, Erlina Voss, primary signatory. I ran my finger over the initials in the corner. The ink hadn't faded. Next tab, catering. I flipped past emails confirming head counts and meal preferences, past allergy charts and beverage lists until I found the payment schedule. All 3 installments had been wired from my account. Milo never even saw the balance. He just forwarded me the menus. Florals. The florist had requested a card on file back in March. Milo asked if he could use mine just for the booking he'd said. I never took it off. I covered every transaction. Ran out of credit halfway through April. Decor, lighting, music. Same story. I moved to the back of the binder where I'd stored screenshots, messages from Milo, photos of vendor quotes, reminders I'd sent to myself. Lacey's name didn't appear once. Her parents had offered emotional support. I gave them the rest. And the car. The blue Buick they handed to Lacey, like it was hers to borrow. I opened the glove box last week and found the registration still tucked behind the manual. My name was right there. Never transferred, not even discussed. They thought I was a footnote, a background character in borrowed heels. But I had signed every line that built the day they were now trying to salvage. I closed the binder slowly, one hand resting on the cover. They hadn't thanked me, but they had asked me to fix it. I didn't plan to fix anything. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for the venue's business manager. There was a direct email listed under accounts receivable. I copied it down, then opened a fresh draft. 3 days after the wedding, Lacey showed up on my driveway. I didn't see her until she was already backing out, reversing quickly, like the house might bite her. She didn't knock, didn't text, just left the car parked crooked, one wheel half on the lawn. The keys were stuffed in the mailbox hanging out, like they couldn't be bothered to fit. The gas tank was empty. The seat was pushed all the way forward, perfume thick in the air, like it had been sprayed in a rush. Someone had spilled what I guessed was sparkling cider across the passenger floor mat. It had dried sticky. In the cup holder sat a leftover wedding favor, a small white candle with a paper tag tied in twine. The tag read, "Thank you for being part of our special day." I picked it up and carried it to the porch, lit it with the kitchen match I kept tucked behind the flower pot, set it down beside my old rocking chair. Watched the flame tremble once before settling in. The candle burned for 3 hours. I let it. While it flickered, I cleaned out the car. Tossed napkins, receipts, a heel protector left under the seat. I wiped down the steering wheel, the handle, the dashboard. The trunk held an extra shawl mine that I hadn't seen in months. I folded it and brought it inside. I checked the glove box. Registration still under my name. Maintenance record intact. Nothing had changed on paper, but something had. When the candle finally gave out, I left the wax as it was and closed the screen door. No one called that day. Not Milo. Not Lacey. Not even a stray message asking if I'd gotten the keys. It wasn't about returning what they borrowed. It was about discarding what they thought they'd finished using. I placed the car keys in the ceramic dish by my entryway, next to the spare mailbox key and a clipped stack of business cards. Then I sat at the table, opened the folder marked Wedding, and began printing copies of every receipt. Milo never came by. Not to check in, not to explain, not to say thank you. 2 weeks passed in silence until a single text showed up at 11:02 p.m., as if that made it easier to ignore. "Hey, things got messy. Didn't mean to hurt you. Just..." Lacey was stressed. "Hope you understand." No punctuation after my name. No mention of the car. No question about how I was doing. Just that phrase, "hope you understand." But I didn't. Not in the way he meant. I understood what he did. I just didn't accept the version of it he was offering. I didn't believe it was a mistake. It hadn't been a slip or a fluke. It had been a sequence deliberate and easy. He let me sit by the kitchen door. He let them erase me from the speeches. He let Lacey take my car, my seat, and the spotlight I had earned with 30 years of work and a checkbook he never had to see. And now he wanted understanding. I didn't reply. I deleted the text. Turned off the phone, sat back in the quiet. I had spent years extending grace without condition, years believing that love meant always reaching first, always softening, always forgiving faster than they could hurt me. But I was done handing out softness to people who treated it like a given. I opened the binder again. The copies I had printed were stacked in order, paper-clipped and labeled. I had created a full index. One for venue, one for catering, one for the florist, and a final one for miscellaneous transfers. Everything tied to my account. I placed them in a brown envelope, addressed it neatly. No anger, no note, just facts. Then I placed a call to the venue, left a message for the billing department, told them the couple should be contacted directly moving forward. I had fulfilled my part and withdrawn the rest. The next morning, I found a business envelope slipped under my door. The return address was printed in all caps. I hadn't planned on seeing him. The brunch invitation came from an old family friend, someone who didn't know the full story and didn't mean any harm. I went out of courtesy, assuming Milo and Lacey wouldn't show. I was wrong. They arrived late, loud, and polished. Lacey's smile was broad, stretched across her face, like nothing had ever gone wrong. Milo hung a few steps behind her, quieter than usual, but still too casual for the weight of what had been left undone. I kept to my side of the room, made small talk, sipped my coffee, avoided glancing in their direction. But eventually, he crossed over. He stood in front of me, shifting his weight between his feet. His voice came out low, as if rehearsed and abandoned halfway through. "You didn't need to cancel everything, Mom. We were going to pay you back." I set my cup down, looked at him without blinking. "You gave her my seat, Milo, my car, my place." I let the words land one at a time. So I gave her the bill. He opened his mouth like he might argue or apologize or say something about stress and planning and how everything just got out of hand. But I wasn't there to entertain more rewrites of the story. I stood, smoothed the front of my sweater, walked past him and out onto the deck where the air was cooler and the noise inside couldn't follow. No one came after me. No one asked what was said. I stayed outside until the first guests started to leave. Then I gathered my things and quietly said my goodbyes. That night, I cleared out the wedding folder, removed the last copy of the receipt, shredded it. Then I took the small silver key from the dish by the door, the spare to the Buick, and placed it in a padded envelope. The return address I wrote on the corner was mine, but the name underneath said no longer at this address. I brewed 1 cup of coffee. Just one. Not the usual two, not the quiet gesture I used to make out of habit, hoping Milo might stop by, or that someone would remember me before asking for something. 1 mug. Strong. No sugar. I sat by the window and watched the trees shift from late green into the first signs of rust and amber. The wind moved through them gently. The mailbox stood still. No calls, no buzzing, no one needing a signature or a rushed favor or a rescue payment. Just stillness. The planner hadn't called. The venue never followed up. Milo didn't text. Lacey stayed silent. The space left behind wasn't hollow. It was clean. It felt earned. I reached for my notebook, thin with a torn corner and 2 pages left. I wrote slowly. This house, this peace, this breath no longer available to people who confuse love with access. Then I closed it. No signature, no flourish. Just a period at the end of the sentence. I went to the back closet and found the old guest list. The one I had typed up, printed, triple-checked before sending it to the calligrapher. 57 names. 3 removed at the bride's request. 1 added because someone played tennis with Lacey's father. I folded the list into a triangle, then again and again, until it became a crooked little boat. I walked to the creek behind my property, the one Milo used to run along barefoot when he was 5, and knelt by the edge. The water was calm. I placed the boat gently onto the surface and gave it a light push. It floated for a few seconds, caught in a breeze. Then, without drama, it dipped once and sank beneath the current. I stood there a while, hands in my pockets, not waiting for anything to surface, not expecting a sign, just standing. Later that afternoon, I rearranged the bookshelf, moved the chair by the window, and tossed the extra mug into the donation box. When the sun dipped low, I lit a new candle on the porch and watched the wax pool slowly.